What's something people romanticize that actually ruins lives? Never taking a sick day or vacation day blows my mind. I work for my state government and we get a good chunk of vacation time and sick leave, two separate pools. I have a coworker that would never take a sick day no matter how sick they were. A lot of people here pile their sick leave because when they retire, it gets paid out in a lump sum. You know what the rate is? 25%. So 4 days banked equals 1 paid day versus 1-to-1 if you actually use it when you're sick. 1 year, he hit his use it or lose it number on vacation, 6 weeks total, and he was 100% ready to lose 3 weeks of vacation. You can only carry 3 weeks over per year because I don't have anything I need to do. Stay home, spend time with your family, take long weekends. Why the hell would you want to willingly waste your leave? I'd rather sit at home and stare at a wall than lose my leave. Story 2. Gambling. My state just legalized online sports betting and our media is filled with celebrities promising good times and big money. A couple of years ago, they left unregulated slot machines, not a game of chance, slip through the legal process, and they are causing havoc in our communities as well. Holiday scratchers are advertised so heavily that every holiday party I've been to this season has scratchers as a prize. The only ones making money are shady corporations and the government. Story 3. Self-sacrifice to prove love. You can't expect people to love you by sacrificing their own identity, their needs, and their love for themselves. At the very best, they will end up resenting you. Why must a person sacrifice their own identity to make the other feel safe or seen? We need to soften our own sharp edges so as not to hurt the person we love rather than forcing them to remove all of theirs so that you can poke them whenever you want. It's like you want them to drop all of their armor, but you can't even afford a scratch on your own because that makes you feel uncomfortable. I don't know why I added that last paragraph. Maybe I just needed a rant. Story 4. Not compromising. I don't mean on everything, like you probably shouldn't compromise on your morals. But there's a lot of things, especially when it comes to relationships, where we have a zero tolerance towards when really we should be more flexible. We all grew up differently with different worldviews imparting upon us. It's ridiculous to think we need to find someone that's a carbon copy of ourselves. Story 5. Poverty. I listened to a lot of music about couples with nothing more but their love and had this idea that somehow being kind of poor with the person you love is actually good for you and will make you stronger and you'll love working together and scraping by. I'm sure there is some truth to that, teamwork trying to make things work, but actually not having enough and you're picking and choosing whose car gets the badly needed fixes and how long you can put off getting your bad tooth looked at. Then it factors into the child discussion. Is this what I want to bring a new life into? Story 6. For those in their teens and 20s, recording every second of your lives and posting it online as day in my life, get ready with me, corporate girly, my 5 to 9 after my 9 to 5. It's a desperate cry for approval if you're taking the time to set up your camera positions every few minutes while filming yourself doing the most basic tasks that any human does on a daily basis. Getting dressed, making your bed, brushing your teeth, putting on your clothes, eating breakfast, getting in your car, starting your engine, commuting to work, and typing on a laptop to look productive. Story 7. Nostalgia and melancholy. This feeling is straight up screwing some people's lives. You romanticize a past that isn't true and isn't even there anyway. What you have and what you get might actually be good, but it's never enough compared to this crap, romanticized past. And then you don't do anything with your life. You're just living in a reflection that isn't worth it. I don't know if I'm being clear, but living in the past is an underrated, massive form of self-sabotage, yet it's really romanticized nowadays. Story 8. The idea of a traditional American dream, owning a house, buying at least 2 cars, having 2 to 3 kids, getting college degrees, engaging in excessive overconsumption to keep up with the Joneses. None of these things will make your life better if you don't want them in the first place, and many components of the, quote, American dream are long-term commitments that can make people miserable over time if they don't consider what they would have to sacrifice to check every box. Story 9. Kindness without wisdom is something deeply romanticized, even though it can quietly ruin lives. I've helped several people with their careers over the years, and I ended up being profoundly feeling disappointed and betrayed. I went the extra mile for them. I truly believe they were my friends. I helped them move forward, earn diplomas, graduate, and build a future because I'm in a privileged professional position and wanted to support others. Over time, I realized those same people envied me and worse, they used me. They only showed up when they needed my help. I noticed the warning signs, but I didn't stop. I kept going because I believed in helping no matter who it was. That kind of kindness without discernment drained me deeply. For 3 or 4 years, that experience forced me into serious self-reflection, learning about my own boundaries, my psychology, and the cost of being kind without wisdom. Story 10. Mental health issues. I've seen so many people trying to diagnose themselves with all kinds of disorders and bragging about it like it's a badge of honor. I'm not sure why they do it. I guess to get attention, to get sympathy, to seem strong for living with it each day. The reality is that people who really suffer from these things know it's nothing to glorify. They genuinely struggle, and it's very challenging not just for them, but for their loved ones and other people around them. Romanticizing these issues is insulting to people who actually struggle with them, and it muddies the waters for onlookers who might not fully understand the reality of living with these diagnoses. I find it upsetting when I see people claim they're bipolar, depressed, etc., and when asked, reveal they never even spoke to a doctor and got a formal diagnosis. This mindset that you can just diagnose yourself and that it somehow makes you more interesting, edgy, or cool is pretty messed up in my opinion, and potentially very damaging. It's an immediate red flag. Story 11. Work hard, grinding yourself into the ground at a toxic workplace just isn't worth it. You can give 110%, show up early, stay late, and do all the quote-unquote right things, but if the culture is broken, your effort won't be valued. It'll just be taken for granted, or worse, used against you. Working hard only pays off when you're in an environment that respects you. Otherwise, you're just burning your own candle at both ends for someone else's gain. I learned the hard way, no matter how hard you work, a bad workplace will just suck the life out of you. Your hustle deserves better. Story 12. I just hate the playing hard to get angle and how often it is shown as a good thing, especially in rom-coms. No, if you are giving pretty clear signs you aren't interested and the person keeps trying over and over, then it shows you are only ever going to be involved with people who don't respect your boundaries. So even if a relationship did form, it will always be doomed as your opinions, and your boundaries aren't respected. A similar issue is people enabling other people's terrible, life-altering ideas. Oh, you're 18 and accepted a full ride to some amazing university with many prospective jobs lined up? No, you plan on moving to Indiana to be with your boyfriend from high school because of quote-unquote true love. And somehow the decision that will eventually cripple the lives is pushed by the narrative as a good thing. Story 13. So-called rescue dogs are a big one people love to romanticize while quietly ignoring the wreckage. These are very real ways it can ruin someone's life. Severe behavioral issues, aggression, reactivity, resource guarding, separation anxiety. Shelters often downplay or outright hide this stuff. You don't find out until you're living with a ticking bomb that can't be safely around guests, kids, or other pets. Constant stress and hypervigilance, your life turns into management mode. Doors locked, routes planned, guests warned, walks scheduled at off hours to avoid triggers. You're always on edge, always scanning. Destroyed housing options, renting becomes a nightmare. Insurance companies drop you, HOAs ban breeds, landlords say no, you end up stuck in a bad housing situation or forced to move because of the dog. Financial drain, trainers, behaviorists, vet bills, meds, property damage, higher insurance premiums. Thousands disappear fast and none of it is optional if you want to keep people safe. Social isolation, friends stop visiting, family don't bring their kids, you stop traveling because boarding is impossible. Relationships strained because everything revolves around the dog's limitations. Career impact. You can't stay late, you can't travel, you can't relocate easily, jobs get passed up because what about the dog becomes the deciding factor. Emotional manipulation and guilt traps. Once you admit it's not working, you're told you're a monster. He's been through so much, you're his whole world. Shame replaces honesty and people stay miserable far longer than they should. Safety risks. Bites don't just come out of nowhere. They're predictable, but shelters love the myth. One incident can mean lawsuits, destroyed relationships, or lifelong guilt. Relationship destruction. Couples fight over management, risk tolerance, and boundaries. One person becomes the handler, the other resents it. Breakups over dogs are way more common than people admit. Loss of personal freedom. Spontaneity dies, vacations die, even simple things like going out for dinner take planning. Your life radius shrinks to whatever the dog can tolerate. Moral pressure to accept unacceptable risk. Society treats enduring harm as virtue. If the dog is miserable, aggressive, or dangerous, you're still expected to sacrifice endlessly rather than make hard, humane decisions. People like to frame quote-unquote rescue as a clean, moral win. What rarely gets said is that sometimes you're not saving a life at all. Sometimes you're wrecking your own, taking on a permanent set of problems you didn't create, with no way out that doesn't brand you as heartless, selfish, or cruel. Story 14. Maybe not a popular answer, but I would say pet ownership, specifically dogs. Most people get pets for completely selfish reasons, i.e. cute to look at, cuddle, or companionship, but undermine the responsibility of caring for a living animal. They don't invest time, money, or effort in training and behavioral management, assuming that dogs have a natural inner knowing of how to be a dog, that they will just figure it out, as if they don't have mothers that have to teach them how to engage with the world just like humans do. It's even harder for them to learn considering we speak different languages, have different social structures and behaviors. We have so many poorly behaved and socialized dogs exhibiting reactive and dangerous behaviors. Because so many owners are incompetent and incapable of providing structure, guidance, and setting consistent boundaries for their dogs with early intervention for problematic behaviors. And by the time you realize you need it, it's too late. You're miserable and stuck with a dog that you can't even take on a walk without embarrassing you. Not to mention how expensive pets are, yet people still subject themselves to financial struggle through ownership. This is 1,000 times exacerbated when it comes to adoption too. Adopting because you naively want to save a dog from the streets for your own ego undermines the complexity of these animal situations. Lastly, shopping for certain breeds or sizes because you like the aesthetic or the vibe, but ignoring that the associated traits of the breed are incompatible with what you can provide them is a setup for failure. I.e., if you're a couch potato, get a pug, not a border collie or Rottweiler. Story 15. Launching a business or a startup, even if you're okay with putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into initial capital and doing almost everything yourself for a while, you'll likely be making zero or negative profit for the first few years of operation. You also give up most of the benefits typically offered to full-time employees, i.e. paid leave or health insurance. Most people who get wealthy starting their own business are either people who were already rich and would probably be well off if they didn't start their own business, or extreme outliers. Story 16. I'm going to throw myself in front of a bullet here and say body positivity. Now look, I'm not saying people shouldn't try to have a positive self-image. That's all well and good. What I think is harmful is telling people who are medically overweight and obese that they are fine the way they are and that they don't need to change or lose weight. No, they very much do need to lose weight, not because of societal beauty standards or whatever, but because it is medically detrimental to them. We have a whole generation of women convinced that it's okay to live unhealthy lifestyles as long as they brush off the haters and accept themselves as fat. There's also the people who might be a little overweight but not enough for it to be a genuine medical concern. I'm not talking about y'all, but y'all have even less excuse to shift to a healthier lifestyle. Rather than convincing yourself your love handles or your gut are okay, you could fix them and feel better emotionally and physically. There's no world in which working out and eating better is a bad thing for you. At best, body positivity tells people to stop being mean to themselves about their bodies. Otherwise, it tells them it's okay to be unhealthy as long as you use positivity as an excuse. And this is all completely setting aside the fact that if anyone hasn't noticed, there are suddenly a lot less celebrities and social media trends harping on it. Why? Because Ozempic. We don't need body positivity anymore. We can all just take a magic pill and lose weight. Ooh, is it too expensive for you? Bummer. I guess you'll just have to think positive. Body positivity is a well-intentioned concept that in practice is superficial at best and dangerous misinformation at worst. If you want to feel good about your body, take the steps to make it better. Trust me, it's a lot easier to actually lose weight than it is to look in the mirror at your fat body every morning and then sell yourself a lie. Physical change is always easier than psychological change and oftentimes comes hand in hand. Stop pretending to be happy about your body and do what you need to get a body you can be happy about, whatever that may be for you. I'm not saying we should all be out here looking like bodybuilders and fitness models. If looking and feeling better and regaining some of your mobility is what makes you happy, do that. If you want to be built like Jason Momoa, do that. The point is, body positivity starts and stops with you being happy. If you're not happy, pretending to be isn't going to fix anything. Story 17. Relationships. Romantic love is a myth. The early part of a relationship is mostly hormones and attraction, and when that wears off, if you haven't taken the time to truly get to know each other on a deep level and negotiate through your differences, then the relationship is probably going to fail. I hear people all the time asking why the feeling has gone away. That early romance feeling should go away because it is not real love. Real love is unconditional, and it takes work and communication and dedication and openness. What we call romantic relationships in our culture is deeply flawed. Story 18. Our great-grandparents and grandparents' generations having long-lasting relationships, especially when these are positioned directly in contrast with relationships these days that aren't as long-lasting. In the past, people stayed in relationships because there were few other choices. They would be left financially worse off, they would be ostracized from their family, community, or religious group, or legally they may not have been allowed to. They might have lost their children, they might have lost their lives of daring to leave a cruel partner. Even today, there are so many risks to leaving, but back then it was often even worse. In a lot of cases, the fact they stayed together in spite of it all isn't this beautiful love to aspire to. It is actually just really heartbreaking and often stems from ignorance around the fact that a lot of the relationships were or are toxic. The idea that it's better to stay in a cruel or even just toxic marriage is so harmful. This gets weaponized against people, particularly women who use their right to leave today. People shouldn't stay in situations that are bad for them. Don't use this narrative to put down people who are finally doing the right thing and leaving something that is hurting them or those around them. It is not better to suffer in silence just to prove something. People shouldn't have to try harder with a cruel person or stay in something bad for them or their partner or their kids. You shouldn't have to wait until it hits absolute breaking point either. Yes, work through little things, but you can walk away when you know. Better to do that than when it's a lot worse. Story 19. Relationship toxicity described as love. I was going back and forth with someone online and I had listened to some chick's voicemail to get her boyfriend saying she hated him this and that, blah, 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 blah. So I said the girl was toxic and it was best that the relationship was over even though they kept getting back together. The other person arguing with me said, if you think that was bad, you should see the things I leave on my husband's voicemail. Like, chicks try to normalize being absolutely toxic and thinking it's okay. Then when the guy goes into a depression, the chick sits there and wonders why. Story 20. I feel like everybody romanticizes childbirth or pregnancy. Like, I get that it's an amazing thing that women can create life, but it's not all beautiful. There's red liquids, other fluids, you're in pain, there's people all around, a complication can end up ending you and the baby, and a lot of other stuff. Pregnancy isn't so great. Having to carry all that weight for 9 months. Not only that, but during pregnancy you need to use the bathroom almost all the time, retching a lot and your body begins to change, not in a good way, just to end up with a screaming and crying thing that's probably going to hate you in their teens anyway. I hate how women are still expected to clean and cook right after giving birth too. It's nice and all, but it's definitely not for me, obviously, lol. Story 21. Less talked about, I think, is owning a pet. I would say 80% of the people I know who own pets shouldn't have them. A pet is not a hobby, a possession, or a fun gift. It's a whole life you're now tasked with taking care of for the next 10 plus years. When I adopted my cat, I made peace with the idea of giving up some of my freedoms because I knew that I shouldn't adopt her otherwise. Just because it's not a human doesn't mean you can't treat it like an object. You don't need to anthropomorphize them, of course, they are still animals, but you need to be aware that they have complex emotional and physical needs that should never be met with just the bare minimum. If you adopt a dog, you need to train it or have it trained. If you adopt a cat, you need to spend time understanding its personality and boundaries. The city I live in is one of the biggest pet ownership hubs in the USA, and yet that leads to so much cruelty and neglect because they are seen as trendy rather than a serious commitment. Story 22. Getting a humanities PhD. Just my observation as someone with many close friends and people in my life in this situation. It felt like a dream to them at the time when they decided to take the step right after college. Young and not knowing how the world worked and having the academic life romanticized to them through the university system. Although sometimes it worked out in their favor, other times they felt it really set them back in life and was a huge mistake to pursue. Story 23. ADHD now. It was embarrassing when I was a kid and I'm only 30, but it's fairly social media romanticized now. Now I'm thrilled so many people, women in particular who were often misdiagnosed or missed entirely because of outdated diagnostic criteria, are getting the diagnosis they need, but the wider awareness has also fueled a ton of problems and really inappropriate jokes and ideas about what this neurodevelopment condition means and how it affects people. For most of us, it means missed job opportunities, failing out of classes, or dropping out of education entirely, spending extra money on basics because we forgot about something, and it went bad or we couldn't find it and had to replace it. Depression and anxiety symptoms, keeping up with doctor appointments and pharmacy dates. It's a lot for anyone to manage, but specifically for us, it's significantly more difficult because of the way our brains are structured. It sucks. If you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 24. Home loans, raises home prices, enables poor financial decisions, keeps people in debt. Health insurance raises and hides health costs, fuels the chase for diagnosis, makes medical care less accessible, and helps keep health information in the hands of businesses instead of individuals, makes true medical information privacy impossible. Dream weddings and diamond rings, financial blow to kick off a marriage. Having kids, often unprepared. Xmas feeds consumerism and materialism, increases shopaholic tendencies, encourages poor financial decisions, produces tons of waste, teaches magical thinking, which can hinder the development of critical thinking and erode trust, promotes a specific religion worldwide. Beauty and dressing fashionably fuels consumerism, shopaholism, materialism, even beginning stages of hoarding, appearing validation, more focused on external than internal low self-worth, financial burden, time burden, bad thoughts, distraction. Story 25. Pursuit of extreme wealth and luxury. We idolize people who attain it and think they earned it. They're actually destroying society. Desperate, uneducated, addicted, delusional people think they should pursue it, voting in people who are completely against their best interests because they believe that, quote, could be me, I could strike it rich. People who have money waste it on superficial markers of wealth and luxury, not only wasting their money, but perpetuating that stupid rat race. In the end, the majority of people end up losing out, and you thank the most powerful democracy and force for doing good in the world to inadvertently feed the corruption. Story 26. Comparing your relationship to the internet, thinking that the internet is supposed to be the idealized way that's supposed to be perfect. It makes me angry a lot that people break up over that cause. No relationship is perfect and it's never 100% going to be happy and joyful. There will be fights and times where you might hate the other person, but that's how humans function and you can't always be eye to eye with that person. Standards is a whole other thing in itself as well, like expecting to pay the woman in a straight relationship all the time, when in the current American, or in my case, Canadian economy, and the age demographic is students in college or university 18 to 22, how can you if you yourself can only cover for your own food and items? And it's only really rare to see people be financially free at that age. That being said, as much as the internet does show some realistic standards like surprise dates and stuff as a basic example, sometimes the internet can show some severely unrealistic ones. Gotta be rich right away or be 6 foot. Again, this made me angry a lot. Story 27. Cars. Easily the biggest answer to this question is cars. Especially in the US, the amount of people ended each year in the US alone is over 40,000. When you see the lists of most common causes of deaths, the number one non-disease related one is labeled accidents, unintentional injuries. Take a guess what a huge majority of those quote-unquote accidents are from, and the number of injured likely dwarfs that. There are over 6 million car accidents a year in the US. Getting in a car is statistically the most dangerous thing most of us do on a daily basis without question. The auto industry did corruption and propaganda for over 100 years, and it worked. We call them accidents, and that's how they're referred to by police and media reports. It's framed as stuff like a vehicle hit or a pedestrian was struck, never a driver hit someone, as if the actual inanimate object was the one that did the violent act. Jaywalking is another easy and early example of propaganda that worked and real criminal crap happened. The General Motors streetcar conspiracy is a big reason why most U.S. cities no longer have the electric streetcar systems that had already existed 100 years ago. The U.S. used to be far ahead of the rest of the world in trains and rail many decades ago. Now we're many decades behind. The economic cost is also staggering. The amount of public money we spend on auto-centric infrastructure and maintenance is enormous, and for many, especially regional and local governments, unsustainable. Not to mention the absolutely absurd personal cost of vehicles these days. We're literally at the point where the creative financing for people to buy these death machines is also the auto equivalent of credit default swaps, a la The Big Short and the 2008 financial crisis, plus ever-rising insurance, maintenance costs, etc. Huge trucks and SUVs that are far more dangerous to everyone are now like 80% of the auto market, simply because they were more profitable for the industry to sell, and it was easier to market these as desirable to people in order to get around increased regulation and fuel efficiency standards that they lobbied exceptions out for trucks in the 80s and the 90s. The ecological cost, too, is insane, not just from gas pollution and the cost of producing oil. It's now estimated that nearly half of all microplastics in the environment are from cars. Much of that is due to tires. And we all take it for granted that this is just how things are and how the world needs to function for modern transportation when this simply isn't true. Cars are romanticized to an extreme degree, from commercials to erroneous associations with freedom to being status symbols, even to the extent that alternatives to driving are looked down on, i.e. mostly poor, undesirable, and or dangerous people take public transit, and forms of cycling are child's play. Quote-unquote, real adults get a car. Story 28. High EQ. Honestly, it's just emotional gymnastics sometimes to keep everyone happy, except yourself. People say, oh, they're so smooth, they always know what to say and never rock the boat. But that quote-unquote charm, it's often people-pleasing in disguise, or worse, manipulation wrapped in a smile. Always bending over backward to fit in, saying what others want to hear, and dodging real conversations to keep the peace. That's not emotional intelligence, that's avoidance. It creates fake connections, shallow relationships, and a whole lot of resentment underneath. True EQ isn't being about liked by everyone, it's about being honest, grounded, and kind even when it's hard. Story 29. A woman relying on her spouse, leaving her family and support system, and isolating herself with the statistically most dangerous man she will ever meet. Across the world and throughout time, the most dangerous man a woman will ever meet in her life is her husband or partner. It's wild to me that the patriarchy convinced women that while they are caring for a newborn and breastfeeding, the best or most proper source of support is some dude, not a group of older, experienced women and medical providers, not her female relatives, not a place where she can receive around-the-clock support. The same goes for child rearing and care when sick. Men leave their wives at 6 times the rate wives leave their husbands when they receive a serious medical diagnosis, cancer, etc. The numbers overwhelmingly demonstrate the physical danger. The burnout that new parents experience should be proof that the suburban dream is a living nightmare. And yet, those ideas still seem to carry the day. Story 30. Intelligence. I have a high above average IQ and I'm thinking constantly, I always have an answer for everything, and I am gladly sharing it for the benefit of anyone who's willing to listen. The downside is that people feel stupid around me. No matter how much I try to downplay my intelligence and only say something when I feel it helps someone, I just seem too perfect around them, which also comes with my issues being overlooked because why would I have a problem? I'm perfect. So why does it ruin my life? I can't keep people around for longer than a few months maybe. I never felt loved or cherished. I'm just a tool people use until the maintenance cost becomes higher than the benefit. Story 31. Marriage. You know what's up when you see the $25,000 weddings that involve releases of white doves. The ones where the money invested carefully might have paid for one of their kids' college tuition. That involves living under the same roof with the same person, possibly for the rest of your life. You will definitely get on each other's nerves. You'll definitely have fights. You'll see them at their ugliest and their worst, figuratively and literally. If you go into it expecting it to be what follows, and they lived happily ever after in the stories, you are in for a rude awakening. I'm talking about romanticized expectations about marriage ruining people's lives, not about marriage in general. Being married and raising 2 sons was the best thing that ever happened to me. Story 32. Romantic love. The I love him or her sentiment that blinds you to the way the person treats you. Implied poor treatment. In general, people treat love as a hypervision of like. When someone likes a person based on superficial things like looks, hotness, style, intimacy, or coolness, and that is sustained for a couple of months, most people are in love and think that the love they feel is worth giving up self-respect because, in their mind, love is worth all sacrifice. In truth, it's not love, it's ego. It's the same brand loyalty hijinks you feel for a clothing brand that sells you gray sweatpants for $100 when they only cost $15. But you're one of those people who lives to say, excuse me, these are Gucci. It's because people choose partners the way they choose what to buy. You're meant to connect with the person, not select them based on a list of attributes the way you do a car. And that's dumb, and so are you for staying with someone who does not respect you or your boundaries. People give up respect for quote-unquote love, and that's completely wrong. They put up with disrespect, cruelty, and distrust all because of ego, not love. Break the Disney voodoo and get your priorities straight. Respect above all else, even love. Story 33. Fighting for the relationship. If you are freaking fighting for something like a relationship that should be so fulfilling, maybe you're just in denial of an already doomed situation. This literally ruins lives because people stay in cruel situations and unhappiness and shallow state but keep fighting to try to make it work. To be clear, I'm not saying that relationships don't require work. They do, but good relationships don't require fighting for. They just work well. Story 34. Being a professional criminal. Heist movies, gang and mafia TV shows, songs, hitman movies and shows, you name it. Heavily romanticized. Setting aside the cost of victims in society, it has massive personal costs as well. Even if you are somehow successful, everything you built can be ripped away from you in a moment. The things you must do to maintain that success strip away your humanity. It's a lifestyle built on a foundation of callousness and paranoia. Even shows that purport to show how awful it is glamorize it, like The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, even The Wire, which is a more grounded approach in many respects. Story 35. True belief. Self-deception is a journey. If you pay attention, you'll notice yourself saying and agreeing with black and white statements like X is always bad, Y is always good. And you'll feel really good about it because the in-group will accept you and positively reinforce you, but that little voice in the back of your mind reminding you that this statement you're agreeing with so enthusiastically is hyperbolic and not true will pass over time. You won't just lose the ability to understand the world and people around you, you will lose the ability to remember or recognize the truth you denied. You are actively ending the part of you which thinks and understands independently. We used to use the word follower as an insult and it stung. Story 36. Gossip. I know people who wouldn't think twice about saying things like, I reckon he or she's having an affair, and then spreading and reinforcing it without any regard, all to derive some cheap entertainment and a false sense of superiority. I think it comes from celebrity culture, which is also unhealthy for everyone involved. I work in an industry where you meet celebrities, and they're just normal people who are often a bit messed up by a lack of privacy and people fawning over them. In my feed earlier, I saw a highly upvoted set of photos of Dua Lipa and her partner on holiday in a bikini staring at the paparazzi taking her photos. Like, for Jesus' sake, let people on holiday be. It's not okay for thousands of people to have access to and then engage with that. People who have a large podcast followings and pretend to follow evidence while persistently pushing skewed views that resist opposing, often rational voices. They don't appreciate that their reach comes with a level of responsibility, which is crapped on by just talking like a quote-unquote normal dude. Any algorithm that reinforces whatever echo chamber you live in. Story 37. The freedom of car ownership. A car chains you to debt. You need it to get to work, and you need to work to feed the greedy little metal can. You dream of the freedom of the open road, but really you're just part of the traffic problem. And then there's the tires. Tire dust is a major cause of microplastics found in food. They're now finding that it is also a source of some rather harmful chemicals. The heavier your vehicle, the more it produces, the more you drive, the more you're ending your kids. Story 38. Fake ideologies. We so often end up liking a person just because they follow certain ideals, especially our own, making them our biggest role models. But we frequently follow these ideas even when they are full of exceptions, and I think this blind adherence to what we believe and do messes us up sometimes. I don't just mean political ideologies, but everything we follow. It's just a mess in general. People can't express things correctly because they have no concrete view of anything and follow an often contradictory set of rules. Dialogues are harder not only because we're trying to win all the time, but I find a large reason is just the lack of understanding of our own ideas. We can also end up doing things for the completely wrong reasons, which limits us or even hits back at us. People might do something considered respectful by society's terms that is actually horrible in its core nature. We act in unnatural ways because our brains think that is how we are supposed to act. In my circle, I see someone who just follows whatever their parents approve of. He is really living like a puppet, and the issue is how stressed he looks. He doesn't really question it, that's just how it is for him. I know someone else who has spent years stressing and babbling about people in judgmental ways that are questionable and bring no positive value to their lives. I even see people who preach freedom but are against the rights of homosexuals. Story 39. The quote-unquote twin flame journey. The amount of money, time, and energy that others put into passive-aggressively stalking someone under the misconceived notion of them being divine beings on a mission to come into union and impact the world is astronomically depressing. It has become a scam that capitalizes off of people who operate under wounded feminine energy, who want so badly to feel loved or desired. They are gaslit by pouring all of their resources into maintaining a years-long trauma bond with people who will more than likely will never have a real partnership with them. Story 40. Preconceived notions of how it should be or what is normal and normative. Your experiences and the social norms you learned aren't universal. I think there should be less focus on specific items or things and more on how those things make you feel and whether you are getting that feeling in a relationship. For example, think less about more money and more about access to resources. They are effectively the same thing though, of course. There are thresholds and bell curves. This isn't to say you should ignore boundaries or things that give you negative feelings. However, sometimes those feelings don't mean anyone did anything wrong. They just might point to a lack of compatibility. So I guess the other thing is the myth that love conquers all or that things will work as long as you love each other. Story 41. Eating disorders. It's not glamorous. It's not discipline. It's not going to make you beautiful. It's the opposite. It is the most dangerous mental health disorder. It wrecks your whole body, not just the way you look. Women lose their periods, which is not as good as it sounds. I may not be able to have children now because my body has stopped an essential function. You are cold all the time. Your hair falls out. You grow a layer of fine hair over your entire body in an attempt to stay warm. Bone density can reduce, making breaks more likely. Your heart muscles can weaken, causing a low heart rate. My heart rate got as low as 30 BPM. And these are just the things I know about or have experienced. It really is important that we keep spreading the message that EDs are not normal or healthy, especially now with current media backtracking to much harsher body standards. Everyone should know the effects, the signs, and the ways in which they can help a struggling loved one. To anyone reading this, you are not alone. You can make a change if it seems impossible. Reach out for help and don't give up on yourself. You are so much more than a number on a scale or a food label, and even if it doesn't feel like it is now, there is a future in which you survive this. Story 42. Toxic relationships. I went out to a friend's birthday dinner years ago, and she invited her other friends who I hadn't met. Nice enough, but one girl, the convo got into relationships and her being single, and she mentioned how she wanted a stalker/toxic relationship because her last BF didn't care what she did or where she went, and she claimed he was too boring. I asked her to elaborate, and she said, like a guy who will follow me, be obsessed with me, get angry if I don't respond to his calls or messages. As someone who's been in DV relationships and once barely making it out and two becoming long-term break into your house and your car and track your movement stalkers, no, you don't want this. Even after she asked me about how my past relationships were and being like, so this isn't something you actually want, she stood and passed away on that hill. She got her wish and ended up being in her fantasy, and she's recently been diagnosed with clinical depression, PTSD from it. I'm obviously sad for her, but yeah, any kind of cruel, toxic stalker moment isn't cute. Story 43. Like the majority have stated, it's marriage. It's gotta be number one by a landslide. It's unnatural and 50% on paper get officially divorced. Those that aren't divorced might stay married because they are stuck by financial restraints even though they want to divorce, they can't. Then another very small percentage ended their spouses when they have never committed any other crimes in their lives and are good people by all accounts, and this is their first ever crime. This should be a wake-up call that marriage is just wrong. Without any final constraints, the divorce rate would be 90%, I think. It's unnatural to have pressures for the sake of it in a healthy relationship, and people should just live together if they love each other so much. You don't need to get married to do that, just love. Story 44. ADHD. Too many people make it sound all cute and quirky. I was diagnosed and medicated sometime in the early 2000s, whatever year I was in the 4th grade. But man, basic tasks are a struggle even with medication, and honestly, I'm not sure I'd be able to hold the job down very well if I wasn't on it. Not to mention the struggle of maintaining any sort of relationship. I'm thankful the friends I've made are at least understanding enough to know I don't suddenly hate them just because I haven't talked to them in a while. I just simply forgot and got wrapped up in some random BS. Story 45. Homelessness/couch surfing. There was nothing fun or cool about not knowing where I would go tomorrow. I was taken advantage of by a lot of people because they knew I had nowhere to go. Living on the street was significantly worse. I didn't feel like a nomad or whatever the heck hipster nonsense people think happens when you don't have a roof over your head. I didn't feel like I had some incredible earthly experience or gained any special wisdom. All that happened is that I got traumatized, lost all of what little I owned, and realized that most people are awful when they know you can't do anything against them. It's also shockingly expensive to be homeless. I had a job at McDonald's, but I didn't have a home or kitchen, so I ate out every day. I ate cheap, crappy food, but it adds up. I needed a gym membership to have regular showers and would get a hotel whenever I could. I paid people to let me stay with them. I hardly had anything left to save up. Story 46. Not working due to disability. So many people think that being on disability is a constant vacation. No, it's not. I can't believe the number of people who don't realize that a life of pain and bad health plus a life of barely scraping by financially is not a good life. Trust me, I'm not playing on easy mode. I'm dealing with life-altering illnesses, body-wide daily pain, 13 different daily medications, and a disability check that will forever keep me way below the poverty line. Constant doctor's appointments, the pharmacy runs, keeping track of medications, finding a way to pay for all the necessary tests and treatments, etc. And then you get to hear everybody talk about how most people on disability are faking it, how pretty much anybody getting any kind of government help is faking it or taking advantage of it. And it's even worse when you have a so-called invisible disability, which is pretty much anything that doesn't involve a wheelchair. But yeah, when you see me with my handicap license plate pulling into my very old and very unsafe ghetto government apartment with my bag of pills from the pharmacy and my food from the local food pantry, you assume I'm having the time of my life while you toil away at your job. If anybody has any questions about what it's really like, feel free to ask. Story 47. Owning a small business, particularly with employees, each employee and their families and young children depend on your ability to steer the ship. You're the one who clients call when someone you hired messes up. You're the one who has to fill in when someone quits, no matter how remedial the task is. You're the one who has to make the unpopular decisions that affect the people you see every day. It's your assets that are collateral to keep the business running, and there's a good chance you're severely undercompensated, possibly even losing significant money. And if any of these stories got to you too, here's more for us. YouTube thinks we're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.